Brandon Beane openly admitted on the Pat McAfee show that he wouldn't be opposed to trading a Buffalo Bills player before the start of 2023 or maybe into the 2023 season at a position that we're awfully deep at. So welcome to my channel here, Bills News Consolidated. We got to discuss potential 8 players that are trade bait for opposing teams. Brandon Beane may very well choose to trade one of these players, and you're going to find this very interesting. The majority of these players are kind of paired in competition with other players in this year's training camp. So we are deep at a lot of positions, and I think the cream is going to rise to the top. And the other thing we have to keep in mind are players that we've already expended capital on, meaning like we've already drafted. You know, I think it's wise if we're going to trade a player to trade a player that we drafted. We already wasted a draft pick on that player. If we can get back what we drafted him for or better, that's could very well be a win, especially if that draft pick is higher than the player of where we drafted that player. But first on my list here, I think you're going to find very surprising, but it's actually Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines came to the Buffalo Bills last year during the season, had a hard time understanding this playbook, didn't have a background in the NFL with a similar style of a playbook like a Damian Harris, playing with the Patriots and that Brian Daboll offense. Daboll was with Bill Belichick for 10 plus years in that same scheme, so he's coming here familiar with this confusing offense that Nyheim Hines called Chinese last year. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all unfolds. I mean, Latavius Murray, Damian Harris, James Cook, and Nyheim Hines. Plus, the other thing that's hurting Nyheim Hines right now is the change in the rules with the kickoffs. You know, I really think just doing that, it's just tough. It's very, very tough. You know, the kickoffs are trying to take away kickoffs. Nyheim Hines is only here for one more year. You know, we have to see. I know the skill set is the same as James Cook. And by no means am I saying that the Buffalo Bills should trade any of these players, but it could just make sense based on who else we have. Now, the next 2 guys on my list, it's going to be interesting here. Both drafted the same year, but Tommy Doyle or Spencer Brown. And you really think about what the Buffalo Bills did here with David Quessenberry, a tackle, really backing up Deion Dawkins, but can play right tackle as well. And then Brandon Shell, a new free agent signing here for the Buffalo Bills. A big tackle, proven tackle here, 6'5", a little bit shorter than Spencer Brown, but definitely girthier at like 330 pounds. So he's going to bring in competition to Spencer Brown. And you know, Spencer Brown really flashed his rookie year, and I think he did very, very well. But he struggled last year significantly, and if he struggles again this upcoming year, I don't know what his trade value would be. Keep in mind, the Bills drafted him in the 3rd overall pick. So would Buffalo consider trading away Spencer Brown for a lesser draft pick for Spencer Brown? You know, we see what happened with Wyatt Teller. You know, Wyatt Teller was a big loss. Getting rid of Wyatt Teller to the Cleveland Browns and just balling out of control ever since he's been there. Pro Bowl, just unreal. So I really think Spencer Brown could very well be that type of player for the Buffalo Bills. And if we just believe in him and give him the chance to grow a little bit, to blossom here, I really think Spencer Brown could be a legitimate starting right tackle in this league. But now you consider, okay, if it is Spencer Brown, if it is Brandon Shell, if it is David Quessenberry, where does Tommy Doyle get in on this thing? You know, and I think the Buffalo Bills, we could very well just trade a Tommy Doyle for a 6th, a 7th round pick, something late to get something for him in the NFL draft. And then you could utilize those 6s and 7s to trade up in the NFL draft, pairing it with another draft pick. Now, next on our list here, going from the offensive line to the defensive line, we have 2 guys on this defensive line, both power-type rushers, and we actually have a handful of them on this team. You got Greg Rousseau, more of a power rusher. Boogie Basham, more of a power-type rusher. AJ Epinesa, more of a power-type rusher. Shaq Lawson, more of a power-type rusher at defensive end, right? So I'm really looking at this, and I really think that AJ Epinesa has done the best out of all these guys so far, okay? And I really think AJ Epinesa other than Greg Rousseau, really have earned a spot on Sean McDermott's team. Now, AJ Epinesa would definitely probably have the highest trade bait on this defensive end that we would be willing to trade. AJ Epinesa did great last year, and I think the Buffalo Bills could very well consider trading AJ Epinesa, or we could very well consider trading Boogie Basham. Boogie Basham has just been sitting in the background, sitting behind AJ Epinesa, sitting behind Greg Rousseau, behind Shaq Lawson. Boogie Basham just really hasn't had his opportunity. He hasn't had a lot of chances to create a lot of memorable moments on that football field, and it could be wise to trade a Boogie Basham just to give him an opportunity to another team. We did draft Boogie fairly high. It's just tough. It's tough to give him up, and I don't think the Bills would be willing to give him up for anything less than what we drafted him for. So it's very interesting. I think defensive end and this defensive line, how we rotate players in and out, there's something to having a lot of extra players on this defensive line, especially with injuries, and then Von Miller potentially starting the PUP list, being out until week 6, which would actually give the Buffalo Bills an additional roster spot for 2023, which is huge. But getting on to the next position group here is linebacker. Now, we're all discussing that middle linebacker. What a competition at middle linebacker, right? You got A.J. Klein, Dorian Williams, Tyrell Dotson, Terrell Bernard, and Baylon Spector. One of these players is going to rise to the top. One of these players is going to start for the Buffalo Bills. And, one thing I wonder about here is the importance of playing on Sundays, the importance of game day. I know we can try to determine our starter through practice, through training camp, through the preseason, but what you don't really know until game day, until Sundays, until Monday night against the Jets, and really their deficiencies. Like, how much are the Buffalo Bills going to be hurt by, say, Dorian Williams' deficiencies, his lack of understanding the game versus his athletic ability, vice versa, A.J. Klein's understanding of the game versus his lack of athletic ability. And then how do you determine where Dorian Williams will be later in the season with that game experience? It's really hard to judge and determine whether or not a player is worth starting. But in my mind, we have Terrell Bernard and Baylon Spector really competing against one another in this year's NFL training camp and this preseason to determine who is going to be trade bait for the Buffalo Bills. If Terrell Bernard is clearly the better linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, maybe we consider trading Baylon Spector. Or if maybe Baylon Spector beats out Terrell Bernard, a higher draft pick, maybe we just say, hey, look, it's time to move on from Terrell Bernard, get what we can. We know we found our guy in Baylon Spector. And last on my list here is Christian Benford. Christian Benford mixed in here with Dane Jackson, Trey White, Kaiir Elam. I really don't think Christian Benford will be traded just simply because of the depth we like having at corner, and also Trey White coming off that injury. We're still kind of waiting to see what happens with Trey White. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit like, subscribe. It really supports this channel, keeping it going. So everyone, have a nice day. Go Bills.